Hi, this is Sarah Joyner. Before we get started, I wanted to let you know how you can design and win your very own Bernina Dream Studio. Just check out BerninaSweepstakes.com. When I designed mine, I had to have a Bernina L890 and a Laura Star Smart U. See it for yourself and sign up today to win Bernina's Dream Studio $100,000 giveaway at BerninaSweepstakes.com. Dream it, design it, win it.
Welcome to So-and-So, brought to you by Bernina, made to create. I'm Meg Goodman, and you're about to enjoy a casual conversation with a special member of the sewist and quilting community. A conversation about how they got started, what inspires them, what excites them, and their connection to this community. Our guest today is Sarah Ramberg, owner of the upcycling website Sadie Season Goods and author of the book Crafting with Flannel. Originally from Chicago, Sarah earned her degree in marine biology from Florida Atlantic University. She launched her blog, Sadie Season Goods, 9 years ago, and it was meant to be a hobby blog as a creative outlet. Well, after she was laid off in 2017, she turned this into a full-time career. Her blog focuses on all things secondhand, upcycling projects, thrifty decor ideas, and thrift vintage-driven travel posts. Her book was released in 2021, and it contains 55 craft projects that use flannel. She's traveled extensively and has been featured on HGTV.com, HuffPo, BuzzFeed, Country Sampler Farmhouse Style Magazine, and GoodHousekeeping.com. Sarah and her husband now live near Charlotte, North Carolina, with their two cats, Cotton Ball and Ruthie. Hi, Sarah, and welcome to So-and-So.
Hi, Meg. Thank you so much for having me.
I'm excited about this. Before we hit record, we were talking a little bit about upcycling, and I was mentioning how I see things a little bit differently now since I've gotten to know you. So I think maybe some of our listeners might have the same experience. So I want to jump right in and just ask first out, how did you learn how to sew?
I learned from my mother, or what little I know, I learned from my mother, and she learned from her mother before her. My grandmother was very talented with a sewing machine, and she was probably equally, if not more talented, at knitting. So she just was very well skilled at fibercraft in general and passed it down through the generations.
So we're going to get into your sewing skills in a little bit, but I find it interesting. Your degree is in marine biology. So tell us about your studies and then how you developed an interest in all things secondhand.
Well, it is quite the changing of direction, if you will, career wise. My background is, like you said, in marine biology, and all of my education up until my mid adulthood was very well rounded, robust scientific background. Um, I think growing up, I always enjoyed, at least to some degree, antiquing and going to garage sales with my mom and her friends. And I actually really enjoyed hosting garage sales. So maybe that's where it started. I just loved the idea of gathering things around the house, and I would put ads in the paper, and I would price everything, and I'd even get, other neighbors on the block involved to host these kind of neighborhood or block sales. And so I guess that love of it kind of stuck into adulthood.
So your degree, like I want to ask one more question about that. You were laid off in 2017, but before that, where did you work that you applied these skills in your education?
I worked for an environmental engineering and consulting firm. And what I did was I was a biologist and project manager at this firm. And I actually worked on a lot of military projects.
Hmm.
So just in it, for example, if like the Navy had a large scale project that they needed to take to get into, whether it was, oh, I don't know, bringing in a new squadron or changing out an air platform or widening a runway, anything of that nature, they'd have to go through this public disclosure process that required environmental studies to go with it. and I would help them walk through that process and go through the public opinion process and all of that. So that's what I did for nearly 15 years at the same firm.
And then things changed for you pretty quickly. And it's interesting to hear you talk about the garage sales. Now, I'm one of those people who has a sister who loves to do what you love to do. I don't. I'm the one who takes my stuff over to the garage sale to be sold. But a lot of folks like you just really get into the intricacy of negotiating and marking things down and looking at things. And how old were you when you first did your first garage sale?
I was probably in junior high at the time. I was fairly young, I think. I mean, my mother was with me the whole time. It wasn't as if I were, out in our garage or front yard by myself. But yeah, I was bitten by the bug pretty young.
Now, we talked about your sewing a little bit earlier, and you said that sewing two pieces together in a straight line isn't intimidating, and you call yourself an upcycler who occasionally sews. So, how do you encourage non-sewists to learn this?
Well, I probably said that because I can, sew two pieces together in a straight line, but I understand why it comes across or looks intimidating to somebody who hasn't, whether you're using a sewing machine or just needle and thread.
Mhm.
But I think if somebody's interested, if they have any interest whatsoever, there's a lot of opportunities out there, whether it's through blogs like mine or actually blogs of true sewists who have lots of instructions and tutorials on their websites, or YouTube is a fantastic resource
Mhm.
for anybody who's looking for just getting some basic skills down, or even if they go on Pinterest and see a project that they think, "Oh my, that's really cool. I want that." Um, that's just a great place to start.
Now you've said that you feel a fundamental need to repurpose and upcycle, and I'm going to quote you here: the broken, neglected, and tossed to avoid buying new whenever possible. And let's start out with asking you to explain what is upcycling.
Well, I think if you go to like a dictionary.com, I think there's an actual definition for it. And it effectively means you take something existing, a used good or something that you would throw out, and you improve it so that it has greater value than it did before. So I think technically that's the definition. But bloggers like me and other upcyclers, we probably have a much more fluid, um, open-minded definition to it where you take something that already exists and you improve it to your own personal tastes, whether that's a style or a color or a look, or just something that you prefer from what it was before.
Now I'm sensing kind of an environmental um, piece to this, and I want to talk about that broken, neglected, and tossed away. How much stuff out there do people casually discard, and what kind of difference can upcycling make?
Oh my goodness, that's a loaded question, isn't it?
It
Because
is.
we are, as a species, humans, I think, are um, pretty wasteful because we can be. I think our all of the conveniences that we have in life, whether it's fast food or really inexpensive clothing, um, things of that nature, make it really easy to be wasteful and to kind of live this disposable life.
Mhm.
So it takes much more effort to be mindful as a consumer and as a user to make choices that don't result in such a wasteful life. My hope is that even on a person by person or household by household basis, something like upcycling, where you're just consuming less and wasting less, does make a difference, even on a small scale.
Our society seems to look at a lot of things that there is built-in obsolescence on items, and honestly, I think we're trained just to buy new, and part of that is the bigger, better, faster, prettier, the amount of turnover that the products go through today, almost encouraging you to toss away, or if things break, it doesn't seem to make much sense to fix them. And yet you're saying, yeah, it really does. Is there a way for people to change their mindset from something that they've really been programmed to do?
I think that's a fantastic question, and it's just a really interesting topic to think about because I almost wonder if it's I have a let me preface this by saying I have a lot of hope for the future and future generations, but I do think there's some lost benefits that generations, before us and ours had that the current one doesn't have. With certain classes in school, I mean, it sounds a little bit quaint, but things like home ec and wood shop and cl- classes like that, even in high school, they really make a difference when it comes to being mindful in that kind of adulthood life. And
Hmm.
I just don't think the current generations have that advantage that we did. Um, we did learn to some degree how to fix things or how important it was to not be wasteful in spending. So, it's a really big, important topic.
One thing I've personally found is YouTube is just an amazing resource for how to fix things. And not only do you save money to fix them or upcycle, but boy, that feeling of accomplishment that you did it yourself is pretty amazing.
It really is. And I want everybody to feel that way. And I think that you hit on a great topic there that maybe somebody who is just getting into upcycling or maybe is just a little curious about it, they don't even realize that that's potentially a benefit at the end. That it's not that you might be left with a great project or something like that, but you also have that feeling of, I did this, which is great.
That's true. It is. It's wonderful. Now, we're talking about upcycling. So, can you take us through the process of upcycling through a specific example?
Oh wow, that could be anything. So there's there's such a wide ranging amount of opportunity with upcycling, and it would be very difficult to take through a process on a particular project, so to speak. But what I would say is that um, I think if you get into upcycling, if you're curious about it, there's really very few limitations. You might be limited by your own imagination, which potentially is endless, or you might be limited by other projects out there that you might search for on Google or on Pinterest. Because upcycling can be as simple as painting a picture frame. Maybe it's naked wood and you want a purple frame, so you make it purple, and that's upcycling. Or it could be taking apart, a bed frame and making it into a bench, which is obviously a much more complicated, complex project, but that's still upcycling. So it just runs this big gamut of how simple or how complex it could be. And again, I think you're simply limited by your imagination.
What's your favorite upcycling project that you did?
Oh wow. Um, well, I don't know if you recall, but back in the probably the 1980s when we had cassette tapes and VHS tapes for
Oh,
everything,
yes.
and
Oh,
there
sure.
were those kind of fake wooden drawers that you could store them in and you could
Yeah.
stack them together.
Yep.
And you still see those at thrift stores and even on the curb, on garbage day quite a bit because people don't know what to do with that. Those tapes are obsolete. But I took a couple and I transformed them into kind of an industrial style metal filing cabinet where you might not, I mean, if you didn't look through my tutorial and see the process, you would never have guessed that that's what they started out as.
So that's your favorite project. Now, through your blog and the community that you've created, I'm sure people have shared some of their projects with you. Um, can you talk about one or two that you've seen that others have done that have really struck you as being pretty cool?
Oh gosh, yeah, they definitely have. But you know what I get a lot of are people's versions of projects that I have done. And
Hmm.
so I really like seeing them take their own spin on it. I've done a lot of flannel projects. That's not a surprise since you talked about my book. And not everybody loves flannel the way I do, but you can, for a lot of flannel projects, just use a different fabric altogether. And so it's really fun to see people put their own spin on an idea, like a wreath or something like that, that fits their needs and their style.
So I know people are listening to this saying, I can do that. I wanna try. What's important for people who want to start to learn to know about this? Because some people just might not have that creative eye to say, "Oh, I can turn this into something else." So, where should beginners start?
Okay, that's a great question, too. If I were somebody who is just starting out, I would certainly go to my local thrift store and just start getting a feel for what they might have on the racks or on the shelves because it changes so frequently, but you still want to see what kind of materials are out there. And then I really think people should just gravitate to what they are attracted to in the store. So if you see something on a shelf and you like it, I always tell people, I mean, if it's in your price range, go ahead and get it because chances are it won't be there the next day. It might
Mhm.
not even be there in an hour or 10 minutes. So it's, the thrift store is a prime place for impulse purchases. And even if you don't have a plan or an idea in the store, um, there's just a lot of resources on Pinterest and Instagram and other places like that where you can find inspiration. And there's bloggers like me who love to get emails from people and they, attach a picture of the item they found and they said, "Oh my gosh, Sarah, what can I do with this?" And I might
Mhm.
take a little while to think about it, but I always respond with, whatever ideas I have, even if they're not exceptionally clever. It just gives them a starting place.
So I want to underscore that if people get something and then they're not quite sure what to do with it, they can reach out to you, and we'll talk at the end of this podcast about how they can get a hold of you. But you will give them an idea.
Absolutely. I'll do my best. And if I don't have an idea, I'll let them know and I'll tell them I will think about it for a while because, it takes a while sometimes for an idea to come together.
So your book, Crafting with Flannel, um, why did you choose to write about flannel?
Well, to be perfectly honest, it was not my book idea. I was approached by a publisher who wanted to create a book that dealt with flannel crafts. And the stars kind of aligned and they contacted me and I um, got very excited about it, put together a plan and they accepted it and I wrote a book about it. But I long before that opportunity came up, um, I had done quite a few flannel projects for my blog. And I've actually wondered, like, why was I always so attracted to flannel? And maybe it's because I went to high school in the 90s, the early 90s, and it was such a part of that grunge music scene out of Seattle. And it was almost like a pop culture icon, the flannel shirt was. And
Hmm.
I've just kind of held on to that into my adult life.
So where did the name Sadie Season Goods come from?
That is a name that I strung together names from my two different great grandmothers. So on my mom's side, Sadie was a great grandmother's first name. And on my dad's side, Season Good, I added the S at the end, was the maiden name of one of his great grandmothers. And
Ah,
I am a big fan of alliteration, and I've always just really enjoyed those names. And when I was coming up with a name for my blog, I didn't I didn't really think about that I should name the blog after kind of the niche that I was going to be working in. I just really liked the idea of creating almost this character called Sadie Season Goods.
that puts a special meaning to the name of the blog now that people can understand that. Um, we talked a little bit about our disposable society. and you really want to encourage others to live a more creative, less disposable life. Does this go beyond upcycling?
Yeah, I really do think it does. It upcycling is just a small piece, I believe, of that puzzle. I think there are just an unlimited number of ways that we could all kind of take a breath and look at our impact and our footprint. Even though I don't go into much with uh, kind of food waste and using food waste in creative ways, I think that's another big opportunity for people um, to live a less disposable life. And it
Hmm.
is, cooking is a form of creativity, and there's other ways to use your lemon peels, your coffee grounds, things of that nature. So, yeah, I think upcycling is just one link in that chain.
Sarah, you've traveled a lot and it's documented in your blog. I was pretty blown away when I was looking at it, all of the different places you've been. So tell us why you like to travel and what the focus is of your trips.
I love to travel for the, same reasons a lot of people love it, where I just love to explore new places and just see whether it's the architecture, the history, or trying the restaurants, and certainly looking at the thrift shops and antique stores in those towns. But I incorporate a lot of travel into my blog because my blog is almost this living chronicle of my projects. And every single blog post, every single project on it is it stems from finding an item at a thrift store. So if I'm at that specific thrift store on that specific day in that specific town and it becomes a blog post, it wouldn't have happened if I hadn't traveled there. And I love
Mm-hmm.
that kind of organic nature of blogging, for me at least. And it also is, it just makes for really great memories because I create these things for our home or something that I can wear. And I can remember, oh, we bought this originally in Richmond, Virginia, or in, Louisville, Kentucky. And so it just adds almost layers to the story, which is just extra special for me.
What was your favorite trip?
Oh, wow. There's been some really good ones. I would have to say I really loved visiting Louisville, Kentucky. Um, it's just a beautiful state, and my husband happens to be a bourbon fan, so that helped quite a bit.
That's perfect.
But what's really interesting is that some of the trips that have been favorites of mine have not really been having anything to do with the city or town that we visit, but a very particular store. And there's this new kind of thing that's happening in towns all over, and it's called creative reuse. And these organizations and stores are popping up, and it's almost like a craft thrift store. And we've gone to, there's a great one in Durham, North Carolina. There's a great one in Greensboro, North Carolina, and they are these secondhand stores that have just oodles and oodles and oodles of craft and arts supplies, or just strange items from a manufacturer in town that they can donate to these stores, and people can buy them and create art or projects with them. So I think my favorite trips have been the ones that included a great creative reuse center.
So do you see that as a growing trend that you think?
I do.
Yeah, so I'm thinking maybe on your blog we'll see you really start to focus on some of that to help out your community with that.
Absolutely. We do have one that's burgeoning here in Charlotte, Carolina, where I live. But I've actually thought I need to create a page on my blog that's just a resource for people, and I'll just gather all the names of those stores and links to their, Facebook pages or websites and the cities that they're in, because they are popping up all over. And when I tell my readers about them and the readers go to those stores, that's what I hear about.
Hmm.
They say, "Oh, I went to such and such store here, and you're right, it's fantastic." And I just love sharing that. I love, because I don't think they get a whole lot of press otherwise. So it's really exciting to share that with people.
Well, even to take that a step further, we can encourage our listeners who are sitting with us today. If you have a store in your community that you want Sarah to know about, reach out and tell her about it. Or if you are opening one of these locations, let her know that as well. So help her get the word out.
That would be fantastic.
So, what inspires you these days?
Well, my husband and I bought a house last year, and over the past couple of years, we've kind of gone through this evolution, if you will, as far as our decor style. So we had kind of a vintage farmhousey style for many, many years, and it just sort of started to change fairly recently. So we've gone through this transition. We've kind of donated and sold a lot of our old furniture, and we are moving into this mid-century modern style. So a lot of my inspiration comes from this evolution and the kind of decor we want and need in our home. And it's funny. Sometimes inspiration comes from the fact that okay, I've got a wall this at these dimensions or a nook, a corner of a room that needs something. So a lot of my inspiration is driven by the needs that we have in our house.
Sarah, what's next for you? What's your dream?
Well, my dream is a slight pivot from what I've been doing, still related, but a pivot. I I have this great craft book and I am so proud of it. Um, but writing a craft book was almost like blogging on steroids for me. It wasn't quite the challenge that I needed or wanted. So I'm hoping to dip my toes in the fiction world, the novel world. So I'm hoping
Mm.
to actually put my money where my my mouth is and try writing a novel next year.
When you say next year, that is coming up pretty quickly,
Yeah,
so
don't
that's
remind
something.
me about that.
So so that'll be, and actually, we are recording this in 2022, but when this posts, it will be 2023, so you will be hard at work on
I
your new
will
novel.
be.
Yes, you will,
I
and
will.
we'll be looking for that.
Fantastic. Yes, hold me accountable, please.
We will, and those of you listening, reach out to Sarah and say, "Hey, where's that new novel of yours?"
That's
Right?
right. That's
There
right.
you
Hold
go.
my feet to the fire.
With everything that we talked about today, is there something I didn't ask you that you wish I had?
I don't think so. I think I would just add in that I think for a lot of people, there's still maybe a bit of a stigma attached to thrift stores, whether
Mhm.
it's from growing up how they did or um, whatever it is. And I'm always encouraging people to try it if they've never gone thrifting or if they kind of thumb their nose at thrift stores. I think they might be impressed. I mean, yes, there are some great thrift stores out there, and there are some kind of junky thrift stores out there. That is certainly the truth. Um, but usually when I encourage somebody to try it and they haven't tried it, and they go into one or they get a recommendation from a friend, they're usually pretty impressed,
Mhm.
or at least they realize it's not nearly as whatever they thought it would be, and their expectations were exceeded. So I think that would be my hope is that give it a try.
That sister of mine that loved to do garage sales also taught me how to shop at thrift stores because I would go in and couldn't see the forest for the trees. So she would show me how to be purposeful and intentional on what you were looking for. And the comment that you made about it's a great place for impulse buys is so true. And it's kind of fun to say, I'm just going to take that and I don't know what I'm going to do with it. And at the end of the day, if you can't figure it out, you can always redonate it.
That's right. That is, and I
Mhm.
have done that. I have absolutely done that myself.
Sarah, this has been a wonderful conversation today, and I really want to thank you for sharing your story with us. Um, I'm sure our listeners do want to reach out to you, so tell us the best way for them to do so.
I am all over the internet. You probably can't get away from me. But if they look up Sadie Season Goods, you can find my website, which you can contact me through that. I'm on Facebook. I'm on Instagram. I'm on Pinterest. Um, and you can always reach me through email, which is sadieseasongoods@yahoo.com.
That's terrific. Thank you again for joining us.
Thank you so much, and thank you to Bernina for having me. It's been an absolute honor.
Well, there you have it. Another story about someone just like you, someone for whom sewing is so much more than a hobby. It's a way of life and a connection to something bigger. If you know someone you think has an outstanding story, a story that should be shared on this podcast, please drop me a note to meg@soandsopodcast.com or just complete the form on our website. Be sure to subscribe to, review, and rate this podcast on your favorite platform, and visit our website, soandsopodcast.com, for more information about today's and all of our guests. That's SEWANDSO podcast.com. And finally, I want to thank Bernina for making this program possible. I'm Meg Goodman, and I look forward to you joining us next time on So and So.